Okay, this is we're talking about alignment procedure here. And this, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but everybody knows that the best alignment system and most experienced technician will never be able to compensate for damaged or worn components. Got me? So all the steering and suspension components have got to be in acceptable working condition. Now let's look here at our tires. Okay, number one is rapid shoulder wear. Now these are just line art illustrations, they're not actual photos. And this is once again, this is some public domain stuff I got from Ford, which is pretty doggone clear. Ford's got some of the best training in the world as far as automotive stuff goes. And then the second one there is what do you think would cause the rapid center wear?
Overinflation.
How about low inflation is what you were saying there. No, wait a minute. Overinflation. I thought you said low inflation. Okay, I just want to make sure. And then you got cracks there. You got number 4. You got wear on one side, which is usually an alignment related thing. Number 5 is going to be a feathered edge. You see the little sawtooth way the tread looks on that one right there, and you got bald spots and scalloped wear. If you get the tires, shimmying a lot, it's going to do that kind of thing. And I will tell you that I had a Ford pickup one time that I had years ago, and back when we used to have them big old wagon wheels.
Oh yeah.
I put in big old wagon wheels on it, big old fat commando tires and all that kind of stuff. It was a '74 Ford pickup that I drove, and and I had the dual exhausted headers on it and all that kind of thing. And not that it was any kind of a hot rod, but you kind of wanted to feel like it was. What I'm saying? It was okay. But this thing, when I would, all of a sudden, it'd start going, and you just have to jerk the wheel, and it would kind of clean up its act. Or if you hit the brakes sometime, you could make it stop shimmying and all that. And then I put, I didn't even get under it and look at it. I just, I work on forklifts all day and other cars and trucks and all that. And on the weekend, I didn't want to fool with working on my vehicle. I just, So finally, I had to buy some more tires, and I put radials on it instead of the big fat commando tires. And all of that shimmying went away. Every last little bit of it. However, the drag link in the middle of that steering system was worn out. So if you've got, and that was the problem with it, so I had to buy a drag link and put on it. But the long and the short of it is, in spite of the fact that the shimmying went away when I put the radials on it, it still had a problem. Got me? Check all 4 tires for correct air pressure, uniform wear patterns, correct size and profile, appearance, abnormal wear patterns. If you've got mismatched tires on a car, that one size and another size and one type and another type and all this, they're mixed and matched and all around, it's not going to drive right. As a matter of fact, sometimes it'll drive bad. Sometimes it won't drive all that bad, but it'll be a problem. So you want to make sure that all the tires are just alike if you possibly can. And once again, if you got a pull, if you got one that's pulling and your alignment's okay and the air pressures are right, then basically you're going to swap the tires from side to side and it goes the other way. Now the other day, you remember this Lincoln that we looked at the other day for a pull, and we swapped the tires around and pulled the other way, and we told her, you got tire issues, remember that?
Yeah.
And all that. Well, basically, whoever it was apparently that looked at that, and I don't even remember who worked on that car in here, so I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, didn't check the air pressure, because somebody somewhere else checked the air pressure and they said the air was really low on one of her tires. And that was why it was pulling. Well,
with the airbags?
Yeah.
I checked the air pressure.
Yeah, well, that was what her story was. Now, I don't know what the other place did, actually, but she said they said all they did was set the air pressure and it was okay. So that's just her story. So I don't know. I don't have any carnal knowledge of exactly what the problem was. Just remember that. Not a big deal. Okay, you're going to bounce the vehicle. And how do you know if shocks are bad? If you bounce it, if you bounce it and let go and it keeps going. I have a picture of a Cadillac, 2005 Cadillac. You pull it into the service bay, you hit the brakes, and it will go barn, barn, barn,
like
barn.
Hydraulic.
Just keep on bouncing, yeah. All right, you got to check it for optimal suspension system equipment, such as any kind of heavy-duty handling or trailer tow suspension. Look for evidence of overload or sagging, like weak springs or whatever. Look in the luggage compartment. See if there's a bunch of copper wire back there or something there. It's all into the recycle and all that. Look for evidence of sheet metal repair that would indicate it's been in an accident, like body work or something like that. Okay, now you got to put it on the rack. Depends on what kind of rack's being used. If you're just pulling it on a drive-on rack and you're not going to raise the wheels up off the ground, it doesn't matter about your air suspension. If you're going to raise the wheels off the ground, you need to turn off your air suspension. We've talked about that before. The ones with air suspension, if it's a something like on the Ford Expeditions, their suspension. Remember the switches in front of the passenger's right foot up into there? If it's in a car, it's going to be on the left side of the trunk, back in the back. And you got to disable that, because it'll let all the air out of the airbags, and when you set it back down, it squats down on the lift, and everybody in the shop laughs at you because you didn't turn off the air suspension. Ha 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 ha. You know, because it makes you look silly because it squats down like a lowrider in the back. Whatever.
What about a Lincoln Town Car?
That's the way, left side in the trunk. Flip it off. It's big. There's a rocker switch in there. It looks just like that. And you switch it off. That's what that rocker switch looks like. Got me? Okay. Every vehicle wheel has got to be directly over the center of the slip plates and turning angle gauges. You need to have that thing centered up on that lift as much as you can. If you're going to have to raise it up, how many of you have ever pulled a vehicle that's driving on a lift over here, and you kind of had it to one side or the other, and you're going to put these jacks under it and raise it up, and they wouldn't reach or they wouldn't line up because you had the vehicle off center? That's a pain if you're going to do that, you know. And so, anyway, now let's zip on to our next thing here. Okay, right here, you're going to raise it off the floor. You're going to grab the upper and lower surfaces of the tire. I'm going to grab the tire like this, and I'm going to go thump, 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 and I'm going to see what's loose. And I'm going to grab it like that and see what's loose on both sides of the car. If you feel looseness, you need to get your buddy or somebody under there, and you need to see where that looseness is. That's got to be fixed before you do any alignment. As a matter of fact, on one of the things, I got a video. You know, some of these big old fat tires will actually wear the front ends out on these vehicles, wear ball joints out like super fast. And so, if you grab them things and wiggle them around, it's got great big fat tires on it. Something else you need to do, when you're putting front end parts on a car, you make doggone sure you put a good brand on there. I mean, don't put no, cheap $17 ball joints on it. You need to actually spend some money on good ball joints. This is life and death stuff, folks. And I've seen some of that cheap $17 junk that within 2 weeks it was wore out. So you don't want to take a chance like that. You're somebody liable to crash and burn. They may not even like the fact if somebody's supplying their own parts and they're giving you one of these really cheap Chinese junk brands that are, obviously. And I'm not talking about like if TRW or Moog or somebody like that, if they have one that happens to be made in China, I'm not talking about those because they're pretty much made to the same standard. If the brand originates over there and they don't even have an American counterpart here, that's usually when you get in trouble with them and all that kind of thing. So just make sure you look at that. Look for a name brand on front end part. Moog is really expensive, but it's really good too. That's I really like the Moog stuff. There's other stuff too, TRW is a good one, and there's other brands. I'm not saying those are the only good brands. Anything that you can find that's loose. There was a lady that came in here and she had a noise on a 2010 Ford Fusion. Bought it from the local GM dealer. She said, I got a noise on my car. It's making a racket when I go around a curve. And she said, I took it back to the place where I bought it, and they said they don't work on Fords. I just need to take it to the Ford place. And she says, it's too far to the Ford place. I don't want him to drive over there. Can y'all please look at it? I said, okay, we'll look at it. So we raised it up. We drove it around. You could hear a noise. She showed us a noise. Raised it up, look, and one of the bolts that holds the lower A-frame was just about completely out. It had screwed itself out. It worked almost completely out. Now, if she's driving down the road at highway speeds, at freeway speeds, and that bolt comes out the rest of the way, boom, bam, she's all over the road, probably goes under a semi, right? You don't have to be some sort of a particular expert on that brand to look up there and see a bolt that's just about to come out. You got me? I mean, that's the whole thing. And it wasn't that hard to just put that thing back on there, hook an air ratchet on it, and torque it to specs, and all that. Look at your steering shaft U-joints. You know what those are? The steering shaft that I showed you over there, the little steering shaft's got a little minor U-joint. And the other one I showed you that was really stiff one way and loose the other way. That'll make it do stuff too. Look at boots for, any boots that you got on there that's cut, ripped, or like. See, Abby was concerned about the lower ball joint boots on her Taurus because the boots were sort of ripped and all that stuff. All right. Next, ride height. Ride height, so suspension measurement from unsprung components to sprung components. Now, what is an unsprung component? Somebody tell me. Name an unsprung component.
The body.
Huh?
The body?
No, the body's sprung. It's sitting on springs.
Tire.
The tire, the spindle, the lower control arm. Everything that's underneath the spring is unsprung.
So like the frame and all that?
Frame sitting on springs. Think about it. The springs are actually carrying the weight of the car. Any part of the car that bounces, the wheels stay on the ground. Any part that's sitting on the ground, the weight's on the ground and it's not sitting on a spring, that's unsprung. If the body is sitting on springs Anything else that's sitting on springs is sprung weight. And you're actually going to measure your ride height weight. And there, if you look at that, and you probably have noticed this before, when you pull that machine up over there, one of the first screens it gives you is how to measure ride height. Have you noticed that? They got ride height measurements. You measure from here to here to here to here. That's basically what you're supposed to look at. If you're a real stickler, if you're an exacto nut on alignment, you're going to measure those ride heights. Now, unless there's some sort of a problem that's obviously ride height related, most of your front end shops are not going to go and measure the ride height. But that actually has the ride height measurements on the car that you put in the machine, so you can if you want to. Which points to measure, what the specifications to be, they're right there in the machine. It's really easy to pull that up. Okay, compare them to specs. If the ride height's incorrect, you got to do what you have to straighten them out. Occasionally you'll have weak springs or something like that, and that kind of stuff. You know, if you do in the pre-checks, all of the pre-checks that you're doing are basically looking for worn out parts or, you know, ride height and all that kind of thing. So you know, make sure you do that kind of thing right there.
Rick, I got a question for
Yeah. Okay.
If you shorten the spring like 3 inches, like on my '93 Silverado, me and my dad had shortened all the springs and put new shocks in and everything. Does it affect anything really?
It can actually cause your camber, you know, to go in. I mean, you actually wind up with negative camber if you shorten the springs a lot of time. If the springs get weak, the camber does that. It sort of, you know, the top of the tires go in. So you may have something there. If you notice the tire wear on the inside of the tire, you may have changed your camber by doing that. Now, you're going to attach these alignment heads. Now, everybody does kind of attach these alignment heads the way that they are comfortable doing it. You know, as long as they are on there good and straight, and you actually got that bungee on it where it won't fall off, you're in pretty good shape. If they got a rim lip, they're really easy to attach. You know, you see the ones, some of them is really annoying, will actually have the tire, some tires that will have a lip that comes out over the edge of the rim. And it does, it's irritating as all get out in the pool with those, but you're going to have to do it. And that one over there, see, the previous alignment machine we had before we got the one we got now, those heads could not see past really big tires. You know, and I've actually seen some of the, there was a lady that had a Charger RT that had like 22-inch tires from the factory on it, and you know, the alignment as far as seeing from one side to the other wasn't happening on that thing. But I mean, sometimes you may even have to tell the person that's wanting the alignment done, if there's extremely huge tires, that they're going to have to put a regular set of tires on there so you can align it, so your machine will, you know, work out. All right. Now this right here is just a generic thing right here. To compensate means, you know, if you got steel rims, you know, they're going to be a little run out, lateral run out on those. So you basically need to, the machine needs to know how much lateral run out there is, so it can actually factor that in whenever it's doing its calculations. The wheel and the hub, you know, is part of the deal. Okay, so if you don't compensate, you may have you know, wrong alignment angles, but that's basically in some ways you're splitting hairs unless the run out's really bad. As a matter of fact, the guy that sold me the machine we got now said if it's machined aluminum wheels, you don't even need to compensate them. This one here, the way you compensate them, I don't know how many of you done that. You put it on there and you loosen the head so that they'll move, and then you roll it back 45 degrees. The machine will tell you to do it. And then you level them, hit OK on all of them, and then you roll it back forward 45 degrees, you know. And when I say 45 degrees, the control head's going to go back that far. And when you go back forward on it, it's basically you're going to tighten it up and reset them again. In other words, you know how you level the sensors and hit OK? Then you go back forward, you level the sensor, you hit OK again. That way it's been compensated. That's how that works. Okay. And then sometimes it'll be a 2-point procedure, sometimes it'll be a 3-point procedure. You may see in some of the shops, they'll have one that you'll turn the wheel like 120 degrees, punch a button, turn it another 120 degrees, punch a button, turn it back where it was, punch another button. Some of them will go, you know, 180 degrees and punch a button, and so on and so forth. So just keep that in mind. That's what compensation is all about. If I don't tell you this stuff, there's a lot of Swiss cheese in what you know, so pay attention. Okay. Now then, here's something we don't all often think about. Basically, once you get the thing up there, did I spell suspension right? Yeah, I guess I did. But anyway, whenever you get the thing up on the lift, before you know, after you've done all this other stuff that I'm talking about, you're going to bounce it. Matter of fact, the little video thing on that machine out there will actually show a couple of gloved hands on the hood bouncing the thing. Once you bounce it and you let it find out, or you can just grab the bumper and pull on it, and they'll let it find where it wants to be, because it'll be bound up sometimes. You see, and if you, how many of you have ever cause yourself being really diligent to have the steering wheel right where it was supposed to be when you were doing your toe, and then when you get through, your steering wheel's crooked. You ever had that? That's annoying, isn't it? Sometimes if you've got it bound up, like you'll pull it over there and you'll put the steering wheel holder under there, and it still is trying to turn. But I mean, I like to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and find just the perfect middle where it's right where it wants to be. And then you lock the steering wheel in the middle, and when you adjust it that way, you'll have it right. Because I've had some people working, all their adjustments made, then when they go down the road, the steering wheel's like this. And, you know, as much as you'd like to give the car back to the customer like that, it's really a dereliction of duty, because they say, hey, why is my steering wheel crooked? I can't see my gauges anymore. You know, that's not very professional.
You're supposed to see the gauges?
Huh?
You're supposed to see the gauges?
Yeah, all of them. Okay. You're going to apply the brake pedal depressor inside the passenger compartment. That's basically whenever you're going back and forth there, doing your, you're checking your steering axis inclination and all that, you got to have your brake mash too. Oh, here's something else too. You might want to take the battery cable off, unless it's a Honda, which you will forget the radio code if you do that. But do something, or realize the fact that if you're working on it a long time and you've got the doggone brake pedal depressor on there, the brake lights are going to be burning the whole time. You're going to kill the battery. That happened on the Lincoln the other day. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh man! But those brake lights pull pretty good. Well, they pull about 2.5 amps a piece. You know, so if they're pulling 2.5 amps a piece, that's 5 amps. It doesn't take a whole lot of amps to, you know, go to town with that. All right.
If I sit in my wife's car with it not running, and I tap the brake pedal for 1 or 2 seconds by accident, that can be jumped off.
Yep. Sean has been driving with a battery that's on its very last legs in that car for the last 2 years. It just goes on, you know.
It's a capacitor at this point.
One of these days, I'm gonna. If you're here at Christmas, I'm gonna maybe buy you a used battery if I can find one for $10 or something. You know, okay. It'll be better than what you got. You can get a bunch of flashlight batteries if you got some old ones and put them together and probably make a battery out of those. I don't know how they probably explode or something or leak.
Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome here.
Yeah, there you go. Refer to the manufacturer's procedure instructions for performing caster swing. Now you know what caster swing. You know how you have to go back and forth for it to measure caster swing. You can't. And sometimes when you're making these adjustments on that machine, it looks like a live adjustment. Right? You'll actually fool with your caster, and it goes, Webb did that the other day. You'll mess with your caster, and then after a little while, you feel like you got it right, but when you do another caster swing, the numbers are totally different. Right? So you basically have to go back and forth with your like 10 degrees each way, and when you get back in the middle, it has actually looked at all of that, and you got everything locked, you know, the sensors where they're, and you know one of the things that I thought was really peculiar about that, when I was talking, when we used to have the hunter guy that would come and, you know, do the machine, I was asking him, I says, are we supposed to lock the sensors where they won't swing or leave them unlocked when we're doing caster swing? You know, because the stuff that on the machine wasn't really clear on that. And he says, well, if it doesn't work one way, do it the other. I thought that was pretty interesting, you know. I mean, I don't know, you know, it's one of the things that, but what I've come to the conclusion on this one, whenever you get those sensors leveled, lock them so they don't wiggle around. You see what I mean? That's the smartest way to do that. Now, when you're doing the caster swing, you're actually going to see the sensors doing this kind of thing. They're going to get on level, and then they'll come back to level. You'll see it has measured how much they moved, and that's how I know what caster is. And so that, you know, you don't have to be an expert at geometry to make this happen. Just watch the screen and, you know, go by your numbers and all that. But make sure, you know, you've actually got to have, when you pull that thing on there, these turn plates, and I don't even show that in this illustration. I've got these pins. When you get that thing on there, before you ever start doing anything, pull the pin. If you're doing a four-wheel alignment, pull the pins out of the back plates too. However, make sure you put the pins back in before you get the thing off there. When you're pulling it up on the lift, I've already said, stop it before you get to the turn plates. Roll it by hand over the turn plates. You know, make sure you get your wheels chocked so it don't roll off the lift and all that. Pull the pins out, and then whenever you get ready to come off the lift, roll it off of those turn plates by hand. Put the pins back in it. Don't try to drive off of it with the pins out, because it's not good for the turn plates. Okay, now we're talking about interpreting alignment measurements. That's probably the most difficult part if you were just looking at numbers and you didn't have the machine to give you a hand with that. In the olden days, whenever Mike over at L&M Tire was learning how to do alignments, and I remember there was a place right there, you might have seen it in Enterprise where the Army Aviation monument is? You know, the guy with the, looking up, the guy with the
Yeah,
devil.
on Park
Incidentally,
Avenue.
my mother knew the guy that stood for that, you know, sculpture. But anyway, yeah, she did, she knew the guy, but there was a, well, she worked at Fort Rucker at the, she was a dean of academic records at the college that they had out there. And anyway, but she knew a lot of people, you know, generals and all kinds of folks there. But anyway, the long and short of it was, right there where those two roads come together, on the left, as you're going into Enterprise, and this guy's on your left, you know, there's the old Highway 84 comes together, there was a place called Wilkerson's OK Tire Store, right there on the left. And this is ancient history, probably before you were born it went away.
No, the building's probably still there. But
Yeah, it's
gone
an
down.
ancient, and that was a place, a tire store that was there, and that's where Mike Moore got his start. And whenever he was doing alignments in those days, there was these little ramps that would come out over a pit, and they had some turn plates on them, and he had a stick with movable pointer, just how he checked toe. And then he had some little stuff with bubbles and stuff on it to check, you know, camber and caster and all that. And that's how he started out doing alignments. And one of the things that he told me in one of my advisory committee meetings, he said, the biggest problem that I have is everybody that gets out here trying to do alignments has been dumbed down to the point that even though they're making adjustments and making things look right on that screen, they don't really know what they're aligning. They don't have a physical concept of how they're changing things. And so they totally do. It's like using a calculator to do your math. See, he would look at these specs, and he knew what to do in order to dial it in. Now, he's about 6 months older than me, and so he's been in this business for eons. You know what I'm saying? He's been doing this kind of stuff for a very, very long time. And his dad was in it before he was. His dad worked at, you know, what's now Expert Tire, you know, back when it was Firestone. Anyway, most of your modern electronics, you know, stuff is going to tell you what to do about these alignment angles. You know, they got pretty little blocks and all, like we see, that moves over, and pointers that go green and all that kind of thing. All right. You're going to have to always, you're going to do caster, camber, and toe, right? And that's typically going to be the order you're going to do it in: caster first, camber, and then toe. Now everybody knows that if you're, and you remember that, you see a little wooden thing over there with a round wheel deal on it and the little wing nuts in the front end pit? That basically is, and Mike Moore built that so that some of his alignment technicians could understand alignment better, so he could teach them. But it's actually a little wooden thing that he built. If you need to dig into that, you can fool with those things. And the reason he has the wing nuts on the bottom and the top is because on some of the Toyotas and Lexuses and all this, they've got eccentrics on the bottom A-frames, which is real handy. If you're doing alignment, you got that thing up there, you can set that thing real smooth. But when they got it on the top, I mean, that's one thing I got to hand it to Toyota. They start putting the adjustment on the bottom, and made all sense in the world. Greatest thing I've ever seen anybody do as far as, you know, camber and caster. Because if you can move the upper or the lower ball joint and change those angles. See what I'm saying? But basically it's sort of flipped upside down that way, but it still works. Okay, now then, look at these different ways of doing that. You got all them different things. The caster and camber can be adjusted. Now all of this is really with caster and camber. You're not talking about toe right now, right? As a matter of fact, on this machine out here, you'll see where it says help with illustrated adjustments. You can click on that part, and it'll show you a picture of what you need to do to make the adjustment. You will never find any picture on that machine telling you how to set toe. Because if you have a picture telling you how to set toe, then you shouldn't be under that car turning stuff. The sleeves on your tie rods are how you set toe. Everybody knows that. That's the only way you set toe. Is the sleeves on the daggum tie rod. You don't need anybody showing you that. Now, caster and camber is a little bit different. All right, you got eccentric cams, elongated holes, shim packs, and bushings. All right, who's worked with eccentric cams? You have? Eccentric cams, you know what I'm talking about. I had a guy one time that was up there at Skills USA competition, and he was a guy that didn't really pay attention in class, didn't think clearly. I don't know what his problem was. He was intelligent, but for some reason, he says, the guy that was giving him the test on the thing says, he had a little A-frame set up with some eccentric cams on it. He says, now notice when I turn this eccentric cam, this part of this A-frame is moving out as I turn that eccentric cam. See? You can see how that's working?
Yeah.
Okay, what if I just keep turning that eccentric cam? What's going to happen then? What would you tell the guy? If I keep turning it.
Y'all know that.
Yeah, exactly. That was a good answer. I mean, if you think about it, if it's egg-shaped or eccentric, it's going to go back and forth, right? Well, you know what the guy said? He says, I guess it would just keep going in the same direction. I mean, he wasn't thinking mechanically, you know what I'm saying? That sort of caused him to come in second place up there. If he'd answered that question right, he'd probably won the gold medal. But the long and the short of it was, and I couldn't understand why he wasn't thinking clearly enough to think about the fact, you know, if you just look at it and think mechanically, well, you know it's going to go back and forth, you know. All right. So you're going to move the front of the control arm outward and the rear of the control arm inward to increase caster. Now, what are we doing when we're increasing caster? How's our ball joint angles changing? Anybody remember? Can somebody explain that to me? List, define, explain. If I want more, yeah, you're actually your steering axis is changing this way, right? So if you move your ball joints in relation to one another, you see. Now, is this positive or is this more positive or more negative?
Positive.
And I'm talking about that's the front of the car. That's positive. That's negative, right? Got that? You understand what I'm saying? All right. Now, when you're doing camber, you're moving it in and out like that. But after you set your caster, you're going to keep your caster where it is, and then you're going to move this one in and, you know, straight in and straight out. So you got to. That's tricky because you got to move both of them the same. You see, if you're doing this with your eccentrics, you're doing this with your ball joints. If you're doing this with your eccentrics, you're doing that. You get where I'm going with that? That's how you do it. That's how you're going to do that. And you can take that wooden thing over and tell. All right. Let's see. Let's move here. Elongated holes. Seen that? You ever seen one like that at all? With elongated holes? And they got them little lines so you can kind of get an idea how much you moved it or whatever, or where it was before you moved it. And that's basically, I bumped that. That's basically like on F-Series pickup trucks. And on the 98 F-Series, each increment of the notches on the frame pocket is 0.4 degrees, 0.4 degrees. And so if a caster increase of 1.2 degrees is required, you move the front of the upper control arm outboard by 3 notches and move the rear of the upper control arm inboard by 3 notches. See, so that's 0.4, right? So 3 times 0.4 is 1.2, is that right?
Yeah.
You got that? Okay, all right, everybody. Nope, no brain dead people here, right? Okay. All right, so, but anyway, you can see how that does it. It's going to show you how to make that happen. Okay, next thing. These are the ones that are really fun. See that?
Oh, yeah.
They got and some of these, and one of the things that I've never really, personally, I do not understand, and General Motors and Ford do this, both, and probably Dodge too. Some of them, they want you to take all of this apart, and they want you to make notches. Like they'll have one of these that's got an elongated hole, but the one on the other side doesn't. And so what they want you to do is they want you to take that thing out of there and use your high-speed cutter or whatever, or Dremel tool, and elongate the hole your own self. You know what I'm saying?
Jerry-rig it.
Well, you're basically you're basically creating elongated holes so you can do your adjustments. And I'm thinking, you know, why didn't they do this for us to begin with? Now they're kind of getting away from that, you know. But they would. And I'll tell you something else. On the Fords, the stupid thing was spot welded, and you had to drill those spot welds out. That was a drag. Okay, so of course if you get used to doing it, you know, you can make anything happen. You know.
Normally backwards cutting corners.
Yeah, see the spot welds, is, you know, or something that you set to deal with, and you're gonna, you know, basically do that. Anyway, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on that. On this one here, shim packs. Now that's not really a very good picture of that. This is probably one of the most annoying ones out there. And General Motors was doing this all the way up into the 2000s model S10 pickup trucks and stuff. I mean, now their full-size pickups had eccentrics on them. But then when the little pickup trucks would have these annoying shim packs. So basically, obviously, you're going to put shim pack. And on some of your Nissans, like for instance, I got shim packs on those too. If you pull all of the shims out, you see, you can't go any farther than pulling all the shims out, can you? Like if you're trying to bring your camber in, and you need to, you know, make your camber come in, and all the shims are gone. Come on in here, partner. All the shims are gone, then you can't take any more out, and they're stuck with what they got, unless somebody wants to, you know, replace some springs or some bent parts or whatever. Okay, we're good for another week.
Did you do this real quick too? Just circle 1 through 5 on how.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to give you a bad rap. I think you do a good job.
All right, now let's just sign it right there.
All right. Okay. Note, Do not want new contract. Okay, so that, make sure they know that.
Alright.
I mean, because I don't want them trying to automatically renew on me, not that that's legal,
Right.
not that that's legal in Alabama anyway.